After losing his wife, a father watches his daughter sink into a painful silence that not even the best specialists can break. When everything seems lost, a new caregiver arrives and, with empathy and simplicity, offers what no one else tried: true presence. A small gesture, shared bread and a story of grief, begins the healing that brings life back to a girl who had stopped living. Before we begin, become part of our family here on the channel. Subscribe now, leave a like, it helps our work so much, and write in the comments which city you're watching from. I love to know how far our stories travel. The rain beat insistently against the windows of the Santa Monica apartment, creating a melancholy rhythm that echoed through the empty hallways. Ryan Miller watched the grey landscape from above, from the 23rd floor, while holding a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. 3 months. It had been exactly 3 months since Chloe was no longer there, to complain that he always forgot to drink his coffee while it was still hot. The apartment, which once vibrated with his wife's contagious energy, now felt like a silent mausoleum. The paintings she had chosen with such care still decorated the walls, but they had lost their life, as if they were mere shadows of what once represented happiness. The grand piano, where Chloe used to play her favorite songs on Sunday nights, remained closed, accumulating a thin layer of dust that Ryan didn't have the courage to clean. At 42, Ryan had built an empire in the tech industry. His company developed apps that connected millions of people across the country. Ironically, he was the one who now felt more disconnected from the world than ever. All his professional success, all his financial achievements, meant absolutely nothing in the face of the emptiness that had taken over his existence on that Tuesday in March, when the phone rang and changed his life forever. The accident had been so sudden, so unexpected, that Ryan still woke up some mornings expecting to find Chloe in the kitchen, preparing a special breakfast for Isabella. But reality always hit him with the force of a punch to the gut when his eyes turned to his daughter's room, where silence reigned supreme. Isabella. His little Isabella, just 5 years old, who was once a hurricane of energy, running through the hallways, filling the house with her crystal-clear laughter and her 1,000 questions about the world. The same girl who now remained motionless in her room, curled up under the covers, staring into nothingness with those dark eyes that once shone like stars. Ryan walked slowly down the hall, stopping before his daughter's bedroom door. Through the crack, he could see the small silhouette, lying on the bed, her back to the door. Mrs. Davison, the housekeeper who had cared for the family for over 10 years, had just left the room, shaking her head with an expression of concern that had become a constant on her face. "How is she today, Mrs. Davison?" Ryan asked in a low voice, though he knew the answer would be the same as always. The 60-year-old woman, with her grey hair always tied in a neat bun, sighed deeply before answering. Mrs. Davison had raised 3 children of her own and cared for dozens of others throughout her career, but she had never witnessed anything like what was happening with Isabella. "The same as always, Mr. Miller. She hasn't said a word, hasn't touched the porridge I made, especially as the nutritionist requested. She just stared at the wall." Her words were heavy with a sadness that went beyond professional concern. "It's as if she's closed herself off in a world we can't get into." Ryan leaned his forehead against the door, closing his eyes. For the past 2 months, ever since Isabella had completely stopped eating, he had mobilized the best specialists in Los Angeles. Renowned pediatricians, child psychologists, nutritionists specializing in eating disorders, even psychiatrists who dealt with childhood trauma. They all reached the same conclusion: Isabella was in a state of profound grief, but none could reach her. Dr. Martin Reed, the pediatrician who had looked after Isabella since she was a baby, had been clear at their last appointment. "Ryan, we need to consider hospitalization. The girl has lost almost 9 pounds. For a child her size, that's extremely worrying. If she doesn't start eating again soon, we'll have to resort to a feeding tube." The thought of seeing his daughter connected to machines being fed artificially made Ryan's stomach turn. How had it come to this? How had a family that had everything, that was whole and happy, become this shadow of its former self? He opened the door gently and entered the room. Isabella was in the exact same position as always, wrapped in the pink blanket that Chloe had hand-embroidered with little butterflies. Her brown hair, which Chloe used to style differently every day, was now dull and unkempt. "Hi, my princess," Ryan whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed. "How are you today?" Silence. Isabella didn't move, didn't show any sign that she had heard her father's voice. Ryan reached out and gently stroked his daughter's hair, feeling how much thinner and more fragile it had become. The child who once climbed on his back, who laughed when he tickled her, who ran to hug him every time he came home from work, was now like a ghost of herself. "Bella, I know you're hurting. I'm hurting a lot too." His voice trembled as he spoke, trying to find the right words to reach his daughter's broken heart. "But Mommy wouldn't want to see you like this. She would want you to eat, to play, to be happy." No reaction. Ryan felt tears burn his eyes. As a man accustomed to solving complex problems, to finding solutions for impossible situations, he felt completely powerless in the face of his own daughter's suffering. In the kitchen, he found Mrs. Davison preparing another meal that would likely go untouched. The table was set with colorful plates, the ones Isabella loved to use, decorated with cartoon characters. The contrast between the cheerfulness of the objects and the sadness of the moment was almost cruel. "Mr. Miller," Mrs. Davison said, wiping her hands on her apron, "I don't know what else to do. I've tried all the food she used to love. I made the chicken pot pie she always asked for. I baked the chocolate cake that Mrs. Miller used to teach her how to make. Nothing. It's like she's forgotten she's hungry." Ryan poured himself another cup of coffee, knowing he wouldn't be able to drink it. "The doctors say it's psychological, that she's processing the loss of her mother and reacting this way." "I understand grief, sir," Mrs. Davison replied, her voice full of experience. "I lost my husband 15 years ago. I know how pain can consume you, but a child shouldn't have to carry a weight like this." The phone rang, interrupting their conversation. It was Dr. Reed with another referral for a new specialist. Ryan wrote down the name and number, knowing it would be another appointment that would end the same way, with Isabella in silence and him feeling more desperate. After hanging up, Ryan went back up to his daughter's room. This time, he found Isabella sitting on the bed looking out the window. For a moment, he felt a flicker of hope, but when he got closer, he realized her gaze was empty, lost somewhere he couldn't reach. "Bella, do you want to talk to me?" He tried again, sitting beside her. Isabella turned her head slowly toward her father. For a few seconds, their eyes met, and Ryan had the feeling she was trying to say something. But then, like a curtain closing, the girl looked away and curled back up under the covers. That night, after another day without Isabella touching any food, Ryan locked himself in his office and cried as he hadn't cried since the day of the accident. He looked at the family photo on his desk, taken on Isabella's last birthday. Chloe was radiant, holding their daughter on her lap, both of them smiling at the camera. He was beside them, with a genuine smile of happiness. How had things changed so quickly? How had a family so close, so full of life, transformed into this shadow of itself? Ryan picked up the phone and called his sister, Patricia, who lived in Chicago. She was the only person he could open up to, the only one who truly knew the extent of his desperation. "Ryan, how are you?" Patricia's voice carried the concern that had been constant since Chloe's death. "I don't know what to do anymore, Patty. Isabella, she's not getting any better. The doctors are talking about hospitalization, a feeding tube. How did we get to this point?" Patricia was silent for a few seconds before answering. "Have you thought about changing your approach? Maybe what she needs isn't more doctors, but someone who understands what she's going through in a different way." "What do you mean?" "I don't know, Ryan. I just think sometimes kids respond better to simple human things than to medical protocols. Isabella has always been sensitive, always picked up on the emotions of those around her. Maybe she needs someone who speaks her language, who understands the pain in a more personal way." After hanging up, Ryan thought about his sister's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe all the specialists in the world weren't enough to heal a wound that went far beyond the physical. Maybe Isabella needed something that money couldn't buy, that degrees couldn't teach. In the next room, Isabella lay awake in the darkness, staring at the ceiling. In her 5-year-old mind, the world had lost all its color the day her mother never came home again. And no matter how much everyone tried to explain, no matter how much they insisted she needed to eat, to get strong, none of it made sense in a world where the most important person in her life had simply vanished. The night dragged on slowly in Santa Monica, and somewhere in the city, a young woman was finishing her last day of work at a family home in the valley, unaware that her life was about to intersect with that of a little girl who had forgotten how to live, and a father who had forgotten how to love without desperation. Destiny sometimes works in mysterious ways, putting the right people in the right places, exactly when they need each other most. Hannah Scott woke up at 5 in the morning, as she had every day since moving to Los Angeles 2 years ago. The small room in the apartment she shared with 3 other girls in Boyle Heights was still dark, but she was used to getting up before sunrise. It took 2 buses and a metro ride to get to Santa Monica, a journey of nearly 2 hours that took her from one world to a completely different one. At 26, Hannah carried a maturity that belied her age. Her dark brown eyes had a depth that told stories she rarely shared, and her delicate hands revealed the strength of someone who had learned early on that life demands resilience. Born in a small town in rural Ohio, she had lost her mother at the age of 7 and was raised by her maternal grandmother, Grandma Rose, a wise woman who taught her that sometimes love manifests in the simplicity of everyday gestures. The child care agency had called the previous week with an offer unlike any before. "It's a delicate situation, Hannah," Sandra, the coordinator, had explained. "A 5-year-old girl who lost her mother a few months ago and is going through a very difficult time. The father is desperate, he's tried everything. He needs someone with experience in complex situations." Hannah had hesitated at first. Her last experience as a caregiver had been with a family in Venice Beach, where she looked after mischievous twins for almost a year. It was a job that required physical energy, patience for games, and the ability to keep 2 hyperactive children under control. But something in Sandra's voice made her accept, without knowing all the details. Now, sitting on the metro train that cut across the city as the sun began to paint the sky orange, Hannah recalled her own childhood. After her mother died of pneumonia, she had spent months unable to speak properly, unable to understand why all the other kids had mothers who picked them up from school, and she only had Grandma Rose, who did her best with her 60 years and a pension that barely covered the basics. Grandma Rose used to say that some pains are so great that words can't carry them. When your mother died, child, you went mute for 3 months. It wasn't because you didn't want to talk. It was because you had no words for so much longing. And it had been her grandmother, with her infinite patience and her hugs that smelled of lavender, who helped her find her way back to the world of the living. The doorman at the Pacific Crest Towers greeted Hannah politely when she introduced herself. "You must be the new staff member. Mr. Miller is expecting you." The elevator ascended silently through the 23 floors, and with each passing floor, Hannah felt a mix of anxiety and determination growing in her chest. Ryan opened the door, still in his bathrobe, with dark circles under his eyes and disheveled hair. It was clear he hadn't slept well, and Hannah immediately sensed the weight that man carried on his shoulders. There was a sadness in his eyes that she recognized, the same she used to see in the mirror in the first few years after her mother's death. "Hannah, thank you so much for coming. Sorry about my appearance. Sleep hasn't been easy lately." Ryan invited her in, and she was struck by the elegance of the apartment. Large glass windows offered a stunning view of the beach, and the refined decor contrasted with the heavy silence that hung in the air. Mrs. Davison appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Another one to try with our little one," she muttered, but not in a hostile way. It was more an expression of mixed weariness and hope. "Let me explain the situation," Ryan said, gesturing to the living room sofa. "My daughter Isabella has been going through a very difficult time since we lost her mother 3 months ago. She has completely stopped eating, she doesn't talk, she doesn't play. We've consulted dozens of specialists, but nothing seems to work." Hannah listened attentively, as Ryan described the last few months, the failed medical appointments, the growing desperation. There was something in the way he spoke about his daughter that touched her deeply. It wasn't just medical concern. It was the despair of a father watching his child drift away from the world and not knowing how to bring her back. "May I meet Isabella?" Hannah asked when Ryan finished speaking. "Of course, but I have to warn you, and she won't react. She's been like this for weeks." Hannah followed Ryan down the hall to the girl's bedroom door. Through the opening, she could see a small figure huddled under a pink blanket. The room was beautiful, decorated with care and affection, but there was a palpable sadness in the air. "Isabella, sweetie, there's someone here who wants to meet you," Ryan said softly, but the girl didn't move. Hannah observed the scene for a few moments. There was something in Isabella's posture, in the way she protected herself, under the covers that stirred a painful memory. She herself had spent months curled up in Grandma Rose's bed, refusing to come out, refusing to accept that the world kept turning without her mother. "Excuse me," Hannah said gently. "May I go in?" Ryan nodded, and she entered the room slowly. Instead of approaching the girl directly, or trying to force any kind of interaction, Hannah simply sat on the floor, leaning against the wall opposite the bed, at a respectful distance. "Hi, Isabella, my name is Hannah. I came here to stay with you for a little while, if you'll let me." Her voice was soft, unhurried, without expectations. "You don't have to talk to me or even look at me. I'm just going to sit here." Ryan watched from the doorway, intrigued. All the other caregivers and therapists had tried more direct approaches, seeking immediate interaction. Hannah seemed to understand that sometimes a silent presence is more powerful than 1,000 words. After a few minutes of silence, Hannah began to speak softly, as if talking to herself. "When I was 7, I lost my mom too. It was a very hard time for me." She paused, watching for any reaction from Isabella. "I stopped talking for a while. I couldn't understand why other kids had moms and I didn't anymore." There was an almost imperceptible movement under the covers. Isabella had slightly turned her head in the direction of Hannah's voice. "My Grandma Rose used to say that missing someone is like a very big wound that takes a long time to heal. Sometimes, when we miss someone so much, it feels like nothing else in the world matters." Hannah continued to speak, her voice filled with genuine understanding. Ryan remained at the door, moved. It was the first time in weeks he had seen any kind of reaction from his daughter, however small. Hannah sat on the floor for almost an hour, sometimes speaking softly about her own experience, sometimes simply remaining in respectful silence. She didn't force any interaction, didn't try to convince Isabella to get out of bed or to eat. She just offered her presence. "Isabella," she said finally, getting up slowly. "I'm going to leave now, but if you want, I can come back tomorrow and stay a little longer with you." As she headed for the door, she heard an almost inaudible whisper, "Come back." Hannah stopped, her heart racing. Ryan's eyes widened, not believing what he had heard. It was the first word Isabella had spoken in almost 2 months. "Of course I'll come back," Hannah replied, turning gently toward the bed. "Whenever you want." In the kitchen, while Mrs. Davison prepared coffee, Ryan couldn't hide his emotion. She spoke. After 2 months of complete silence, she spoke to you. "Sometimes children just need to know they're not alone in their pain," Hannah explained. "Isabella isn't being stubborn or difficult. She's suffering in a way she has no words." To explain. "Do you really think you can help her?" Ryan asked, and for the first time in months there was a spark of hope in his voice. "I can't promise miracles," Hannah answered honestly, "but I can promise that I'll try to understand what she's feeling. I've been in her shoes." That afternoon, Ryan signed Hannah's employment contract without hesitation. For the first time in months, he felt he had found someone who spoke his daughter's language, someone who understood that healing sometimes comes through understanding and not medical protocols. Hannah returned the next day very early, even before Mrs. Davison arrived. Ryan greeted her in the kitchen, still amazed by Isabella's reaction the day before. "How did you do it? In 1 hour you achieved what dozens of professionals couldn't in months." "I haven't achieved anything yet," Hannah replied, pouring herself a glass of water. Isabella just recognized in me someone who understands her pain. This is just the beginning. She went up to Isabella's room and found the girl in the same position as the day before, but this time when she entered, Isabella turned her face slightly in her direction. "Good morning, Isabella. How did you sleep?" Hannah asked, sitting back down in the same spot as the day before. There was no verbal response, but Hannah noticed that the girl was more attentive to her presence. "You know, when my mum died, I stopped eating for a while too. The food tasted strange, as if it no longer belonged in a world where my mum wasn't." Hannah spoke slowly, choosing each word carefully. Isabella stirred under the covers, and for the first time her eyelids opened completely, revealing dark eyes very similar to her father's. "My Grandma Rose used to bring me little pieces of bread and butter. She didn't force it. She would just leave it beside me and say that when I was ready, the food would be there waiting for me." Hannah took a small package wrapped in aluminum foil from her bag. "I brought you a little piece of bread and butter. You don't have to eat it now or today or tomorrow. I'm just going to leave it here beside you in case you feel like it." She placed the small sandwich on the nightstand and returned to her spot on the floor. "Can I tell you what my mom was like?" Hannah asked. Isabella nodded almost imperceptibly. "She had long hair like yours, and she always smelled of lavender soap. When I was sad or scared, she would sit on my bed and sing a song very softly until I fell asleep." "My mommy sang too," Isabella whispered, so quietly that Hannah almost didn't hear. It was the first complete sentence Isabella had uttered in months. Hannah felt her eyes well up with tears, but she kept her voice steady. "What song did she sing to you?" "You Are My Sunshine." Isabella closed her eyes as if she could hear her mother's voice in her memory. "That's a beautiful song. Do you want me to sing it for you?" Isabella nodded, and Hannah began to softly sing the classic children's song. Her voice filled the silent room, carrying with it years of longing and understanding. When she finished singing, Isabella had turned completely to face Hannah. Her eyes were fixed on the young caregiver's face, as if she were studying every feature, trying to understand how someone could know the language of her pain so deeply. "Do you get sad without your mom too?" Isabella asked. "I do, every single day. But I learned that we can miss someone and still live. Our mums wouldn't want us to be sad forever." Isabella was silent for a few minutes, processing Hannah's words. Then, slowly, she reached her small hand toward the bread that Hannah had left on the nightstand. "Can I just have a little piece?" she asked, as if needing permission. "You can have as much as you want, or nothing at all. The choice is yours." Isabella picked up the small sandwich and took a tiny bite, chewing slowly as if rediscovering the taste of food. Then, to Hannah's surprise, tears began to roll down the girl's face. "Is it good?" Hannah asked gently. "It is. But I feel guilty," Isabella confessed between sobs. "Guilty why?" "Because if I eat, if I get better, maybe I'll forget my mum." Hannah stood up slowly and approached the bed, silently asking for permission before sitting on the edge. "Can I tell you a secret? The more you take care of yourself, the more you honor your mother's memory. She loved you so much that she would want to see you grow up strong and happy." Isabella took another bite of the bread, and this time she managed to swallow without crying. Downstairs, Ryan had come up silently and was watching the scene from the doorway. Seeing his daughter eat for the first time in 2 months, he had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. Mrs. Davison appeared behind him, and upon witnessing the miracle happening in the room, she began to cry silently, her hands pressed to her chest. It was just a small piece of bread and butter, but it represented infinitely more than that. It was the first spark of life returning to Isabella's eyes, the first bridge being built over the chasm of pain that had separated father and daughter for months, and Hannah knew that this was just the first step on a long but finally possible journey. The following days became a delicate ritual of patience and discovery. Hannah arrived every morning at 7, always carrying small sandwiches wrapped in foil in her bag, and Isabella began to await her arrival sitting on the edge of the bed, still wrapped in her butterfly blanket, but with her eyes fixed on the bedroom door. Ryan watched this transformation with a mixture of relief and fascination. For the first time in months, there was a routine that didn't revolve around doctor's appointments and medications. It was a simple, human routine built on the fragile but real foundation of trust that Isabella was developing for Hannah. "Good morning, little butterfly," Hannah would say upon entering the room, using the affectionate nickname that had naturally developed between them. Isabella had started to smile shyly when she heard those words, a small smile that lit up the entire apartment. "Did you bring the bread today?" Isabella would ask, and this simple question represented a monumental victory for everyone in the house. "I did, but today I brought something new." Hannah would sit on the edge of the bed, a privilege she had gradually earned. "How about you help me choose what we'll make tomorrow?" Isabella would furrow her small eyebrows, concentrating on the decision as if it were the most important of her life. "Can I choose anything?" "Anything you want." "I want a grilled cheese, just like Mommy used to make on Sunday afternoons," Isabella said, and for the first time she mentioned Chloe without her eyes filling with tears. Hannah smiled, her heart racing with this small achievement. "Then we'll make Mommy's grilled cheese on Sunday." Downstairs in the kitchen, Ryan was finishing his breakfast when he heard something he hadn't heard in months, the sound of Isabella's laughter. It was quiet, timid, but it was genuine. He dropped his cup on the table with such force that he nearly broke it, and Mrs. Davison came running from the laundry room. "What is it, Mr. Miller? Did something happen?" "Listen," Ryan whispered, pointing upstairs. They stood in silence, and again the sound of Isabella's laughter echoed through the house. Mrs. Davison brought her hands to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. "Thank God," she murmured. "Our little girl is coming back." Ryan went up the stairs slowly, wanting to confirm with his own eyes what his ears had heard. He stopped at the bedroom door and saw Isabella sitting on the bed, talking animatedly with Hannah about the different types of cheese they could use in the Sunday sandwich. "What if we use that cheese that melts really nicely?" Isabella suggested. "Mozzarella cheese?" Hannah asked. "That's the one, and ham too. Mommy always put ham in it." Ryan leaned against the hallway wall too, moved to enter the room. It was like watching his daughter be reborn, word by word, smile by smile. During the week, the routine established itself naturally. Hannah would arrive in the morning and spend the first 2 hours in the room with Isabella, talking, singing the songs Chloe used to sing, and always offering small portions of food that Isabella began to accept with less resistance each day. "Hannah," Isabella said on a rainy Thursday, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, you can ask anything." "When your mom died, were you mad at God?" The question caught Hannah off guard. She stopped combing Isabella's hair and thought before answering. "I was. For a long time I was very angry. I didn't understand why God had taken my mom away and left other moms with their kids." "I'm angry too," Isabella confessed in a low voice. "But I'm afraid to tell Daddy. He's already so sad." Hannah sat in front of Isabella, gently holding her small hands. "You know what my Grandma Rose told me when I told her I was angry? She said that God understands when we get angry. He knows it's because we love so much. Do you think Mommy knows I'm angry? I'm sure she knows, and I'm sure she understands." Isabella was thoughtful for a few moments. "Hannah, do you think if I get better, if I start playing and being happy again, Mommy will be happy too? I think she's already happy just seeing that you're talking, eating, and smiling again. Then I'm going to try to get better faster," Isabella declared, with a determination that surprised Hannah. On Saturday night, Ryan was in his office when Hannah knocked on the door. "Excuse me, Mr. Miller, may I speak with you?" "Of course, come in, and please, you can just call me Ryan." Hannah entered the office, and Ryan noticed she seemed hesitant, as if struggling to find the right words. "It's about the sandwich tomorrow," she began. "Isabella is very excited, but I wanted to talk to you first. She wants to make the grilled cheese her mother used to make on Sundays." Ryan felt his chest tighten. Sundays had been sacred for Chloe and Isabella. It was the day they made grilled cheese in the kitchen, laughing, making a mess, creating memories that now hurt like open wounds. "I know. It must be difficult," Hannah continued, noticing the pained expression on Ryan's face. But I think Isabella needs to reconnect with the happy memories of her mother, not just the sadness of the loss. You're right, Ryan said after a few moments of silence. It's just that, since Chloe died, I've avoided everything that reminded me of her. I thought it would be easier that way. And was it easier? Ryan laughed bitterly. No, it was impossible. She's in every corner of this house, in every memory. Running from the pain didn't make it disappear. Isabella was running from the pain too. But sometimes to heal we need to walk through the pain, not run from it. On Sunday morning, the kitchen of the Santa Monica apartment woke up differently. Isabella had gotten up early, even before Hannah arrived, and was waiting anxiously at the breakfast table, swinging her little legs. "Daddy, when Hannah gets here, we're going to make Mommy's grilled cheese," she announced when Ryan appeared in his bathrobe, still sleepy. "We sure are, my princess," Ryan replied, and for the first time in months he didn't feel like crying when she called him Daddy. Hannah arrived promptly, at 9, and found Isabella already in the kitchen, wearing an apron that was far too big for her tied around her waist. "I'm ready," the girl declared, raising her arms. "Then let's begin our cooking class," Hannah said, laughing. Ryan watched from the kitchen doorway as Hannah taught Isabella how to butter the bread, place the cheese and ham just right, and heat the pan to the perfect temperature. "Mommy always said the secret was patience," Isabella commented, focused on her task. "You couldn't be in a hurry to get it golden brown." "Your mother was right. The best things in life require patience," Hannah replied. When the sandwich was ready, golden and fragrant, Isabella carefully cut it in half and placed the pieces on a plate. "Daddy," she called, "come try it." Ryan approached the counter with a racing heart. It was the first time Isabella had called him to actively participate in anything since Chloe's death. "Is it just like Mommy's?" Isabella asked, anxious for her father's verdict. Ryan took a bite of the sandwich and closed his eyes. For a moment it was as if Chloe were there in the kitchen with them, smiling, filling the room with her contagious energy. "It's perfect, my princess, just like Mommy's." Isabella beamed and turned to Hannah. "Now you try." The three of them stood in the kitchen, sharing the sandwich and talking about simple things, how the cheese had melted perfectly, how the bread was crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, how proud Chloe would be to see Isabella cooking. "Hannah," Isabella said after finishing her portion, "can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "I was trying to stop eating so I could go find Mommy in heaven." The silence that followed was thick and heavy with emotion. Ryan felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach, and Hannah had to lean on the counter for support. "Little butterfly," Hannah said, her voice choked with emotion, "did you know that if you had managed to go to heaven, your mommy would have been very sad?" "Why?" "Because mothers want their children to live, to grow up, to be happy. Your mommy wouldn't want you to go to heaven while you were still so little. She would want you to grow up, go to school, have friends, get married, have your own children." Isabella absorbed this information with the seriousness only children can possess. "So I can miss Mommy, but I have to live." Exactly. The longing will always be there, but it doesn't have to stop you from being happy. Ryan approached Isabella and picked her up for the first time in months. She didn't resist. On the contrary, she snuggled into her father's chest as she used to before the accident. "Daddy, were you trying not to live too?" Isabella asked with her devastating honesty. Ryan couldn't answer immediately. His daughter's question had struck the very center of his own wound. He had spent months on autopilot, working obsessively, avoiding feeling, avoiding living. "I think so, my princess. I think we both forgot how to live without Mommy. But now Hannah is teaching us again, right?" Ryan looked at Hannah, who was by the sink washing dishes, discreetly trying to wipe away the tears streaming down her face. "She is. Hannah is teaching us that we can miss someone and still be happy." That afternoon, Isabella asked to watch a movie in the living room, the first time she had left her room of her own accord. The three of them settled, on the sofa, Isabella between Hannah and Ryan, and watched a children's comedy that made the girl laugh several times. During the movie, Isabella turned to Hannah and whispered, "Will you stay with us forever?" "I'll stay as long as you want me to. I want you to stay forever." Then I'll stay forever. Ryan, who had overheard the whispered conversation, felt something stir in his chest, something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not just hope that Isabella would recover, but hope that they could be a family again, even if it was a different family than they had before. At the end of the afternoon, as Hannah was preparing to leave, Isabella ran to her and hugged her tightly. "Thank you for teaching me how to live again," the girl said. "Thank you for letting me learn with you," Hannah replied. After Isabella went for her bath with Mrs. Davison, Ryan approached Hannah at the door. "I don't know how to thank you for what you're doing for us. You don't have to thank me. Isabella is teaching me as much as I'm teaching her." "Hannah, can I ask you a personal question?" "You can." "How did you get over the loss of your mother? How did you manage to start living fully again?" Hannah smiled sadly. "The truth is, I never completely got over it. I still miss her every day. But I learned that carrying the longing doesn't mean you stop living. It means living in a way that honors the memory of the one you love. Do you think I could learn that too?" "I think you're already learning." When Hannah left the apartment that night, Ryan stood on the balcony looking at the ocean, with Isabella by his side. For the first time, in months, the silence between them wasn't heavy or painful. It was a companionable silence, of a father and daughter finding their way back to each other. "Daddy," Isabella said, holding his hand. "Yes, my princess. I think Mommy is happy seeing us like this." "I think she is too, Isabella. I really think she is." And that night, for the first time since the accident, Isabella slept through the night without waking up crying, and Ryan managed to sleep without having nightmares. The healing was still in its early stages, but it had finally truly begun, fueled by grilled cheese sandwiches, heartfelt conversations, and the transformative presence of someone who had dared to simply stay when everyone else could no longer reach them. The following months brought a quiet but profound transformation to the Santa Monica apartment. The curtains, which had remained closed since the accident, were opened again, allowing the golden Los Angeles sunlight to flood the rooms. Chloe's grand piano was unlocked, and Isabella began to dabble at the keys in the late afternoons, trying to reproduce the melodies her mother used to play. Hannah had become an essential part of the family's routine. Her presence was no longer merely professional. She integrated naturally into the household dynamic, bringing with her a gentle energy that perfectly complemented Ryan's more reserved personality and Isabella's recovering sensitivity. "Hannah, are you having lunch with us today?" Isabella would ask every morning, and the always affirmative answer made her eyes sparkle with joy. Ryan observed these small interactions with a feeling he was slow to recognize. It wasn't just gratitude for what Hannah was doing for Isabella. It was something deeper, more personal. He found himself eagerly awaiting her arrival each morning, paying attention to the details. How she tied her hair back when she was concentrating, how her laughter echoed through the house when Isabella told one of her childish jokes, how she had a gift for turning simple moments into special memories. On a Thursday in March, after Isabella had been re-enrolled in school and was adjusting well to the routine, Ryan found the courage to have a conversation he had been putting off for weeks. "Hannah, can I talk to you?" he asked, when Isabella went out to play at the condominium's playground with Mrs. Davison. "Of course, is something wrong?" They sat on the balcony overlooking the sea. The ocean breeze gently swayed the curtains, and Ryan realized it was the first time in months he could appreciate the beauty of the place without feeling a pang of pain. "I want to thank you for everything you've done for us. It's not just about Isabella eating or talking again. It's about bringing life back into this house." Hannah smiled, but there was a subtle sadness in her eyes. "Isabella is an incredible girl. She just needed someone who understood her language." "It's not just about Isabella," Ryan said, gathering his courage. "It's about me, too. You helped me remember how to be a father again, how to live again." "Ryan, let me finish," he asked gently. "I know our situation is complicated. You work for me. You took care of my daughter during a terrible time in our lives. But I can't ignore what I'm feeling." Hannah looked away towards the sea, her nervous hands fiddling with the strap of her purse. "What are you feeling?" she asked in a low voice. "I'm falling in love with you, Hannah. And I have a feeling from the way you look at me sometimes, how you care not just for Isabella but for me too, that maybe you feel something similar." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable, but it was charged with emotion. Hannah finally turned to face him, and Ryan could see tears forming in her eyes. "I do," she confessed. "From the very first day when I saw you so desperate about Isabella's situation, when I realized how much you love your daughter, how much you were suffering. But I'm scared, Ryan." "Scared of what?" "Scared that I'm confusing gratitude with love. Scared that I'm taking advantage of a moment of vulnerability. Scared that when everything goes back to normal, you'll realize what you feel isn't real." Ryan moved closer to her, gently taking her hands. "Hannah, what I feel for you has nothing to do with gratitude. It has to do with the extraordinary woman you are. With your strength, your compassion, your ability to love without expecting anything in return. And what if it doesn't work out? Isabella has already lost one mother. I can't risk hurting her. Isabella loves you, Hannah. Anyone can see that. And as for it working out," Ryan paused, choosing his words carefully, "I can't promise you it will be perfect, but I can promise you that I will fight for us, for this family we're building together." Hannah closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and when she opened them again, there was a decision in them. "I'm falling in love with you too, Ryan, and with Isabella, with this life you've allowed me to share." The first kiss happened naturally, soft and full of promise. When they parted, they were both smiling through tears. "And now?" Hannah asked. "Now we live one day at a time. Nothing has to change immediately. We continue to care for Isabella. We continue our routine, but now knowing there's something special between us." That night, Isabella noticed that something was different in the air. During dinner, she watched Ryan and Hannah with her childlike astuteness, noticing the more frequent smiles, the conversations that flowed more easily, the way they looked at each other when they thought she wasn't watching. "Daddy," she said at bedtime, as Ryan tucked her in. "What is it, my princess?" "You're happier." Ryan smiled, kissing his daughter's forehead. "I am." "Is it because of Hannah?" Isabella's direct question caught him off guard, but he decided to answer, honestly. "It's because of her too, and especially because of you." "I like Hannah," Isabella declared. "She reminds me of Mommy, but in a good way." "How so?" "Mommy always said that love doesn't get smaller when you share it. It grows. I think that's what's happening with you and Hannah." Ryan was moved by his daughter's maturity. "Would you be happy if Hannah stayed with us forever, not just as a caregiver, but as family?" Isabella thought for a few moments, with the seriousness the question deserved. "Mommy would have liked Hannah," she said finally. "She would want us to be happy. So yes, I would be very happy." The weeks passed, and the relationship between Ryan and Hannah developed organically. There was no rush or pressure, just a gradual and natural discovery of how their lives fit together perfectly. Hannah began to stay for dinner more frequently, participating in conversations about Isabella's day at school, helping with homework, sharing stories from her own childhood. Isabella flourished in this environment of security and love. She started drawing again, an activity she had completely abandoned after her mother's death. Her drawings now depicted a family of 3, a tall man, a woman with long hair, and a little girl, all holding hands in front of a colorful house. "This is you, Daddy, this is me, and this is Hannah," she would explain, proudly showing off her drawings. "And where are we?" "At our house. But it's not this sad house from before, it's a happy house where everyone smiles." The Sunday grilled cheese ritual had become sacred for the 3 of them. It was the time of the week when they gathered in the kitchen, Isabella commanding the operation, with the seriousness of a professional chef, Hannah assisting with infinite patience, and Ryan observing and participating in the organized mess that had become the hallmark of these moments. "Today we're going to try a different kind of sandwich," Isabella announced on a Sunday in May, having turned 6 just a few weeks prior. "Different how?" Hannah asked, curious. "We're going to put tomato and lettuce like you like, Hannah. And that special cheese Daddy brought. Brie cheese, Ryan clarified. That's it. It's going to be gourmet, Isabella said, using a word she had recently learned and loved to repeat. While they prepared the sandwich, Isabella told them about her week. At school, about the new friend she had made, about the teacher who praised her family drawing. Her recovery was complete, but more than that, she had become an even stronger, more resilient version of herself. Hannah, Isabella said, as they waited for the sandwich to turn golden in the pan, can I tell you a secret? Of course. Sometimes I dream about Mommy, and in the dream she's happy. She tells me she's proud of how I've grown and that she likes you very much. Hannah was moved but managed to keep her voice steady. What a beautiful dream. Little butterfly. And you know what else? In the dream, Mummy says that you and Daddy were made for each other. Ryan, who was setting the table, stopped what he was doing. Isabella had spoken with such naturalness, such certainty, that it seemed impossible to doubt the truth of her words. That afternoon, after Isabella went out to play with friends from the building, Ryan and Hannah were left alone in the living room. She's right, you know, Ryan said. About what? About us being made for each other. Hannah smiled, snuggling beside him on the sofa. How can you be so sure? Because you didn't just save Isabella, you saved me too. Before you arrived, I was on autopilot, surviving, not living. You showed me that it's possible to carry the memory of Chloe and still build a new life, full of love. Chloe was special, Hannah said. I can feel it in every corner of this house, in every story Isabella tells about her. She was, and I know she would approve of what's happening between us. Chloe always said that love is the only thing in the world that grows when it's divided. Isabella said the exact same thing. She inherited her mother's wisdom. That night, Ryan made a decision that had been maturing for weeks. After Isabella fell asleep, he went to his room and opened the dresser drawer where he kept Chloe's jewelry. Not her engagement ring, that would be saved for Isabella when she grew up, but a delicate gold chain that Chloe wore on special occasions. The next morning, before Hannah arrived, Ryan called Isabella for a serious talk. Princess, I need to talk to you about something important. Isabella sat on the bed paying full attention. You know that Hannah and I like each other a lot, right? You love each other, Isabella corrected with her usual frankness. That's true, we do love each other, and I was thinking of asking her to marry me. What do you think? Isabella's eyes lit up like fireworks. Really, Daddy? Is Hannah going to be my real mom? If she says yes, and if you want her to, yes. Isabella jumped off the bed and hugged Ryan so tightly she nearly knocked him over. I do. I really, really do. So will you help me ask her to marry me? How? Ryan showed the gold chain to the gold, Isabella. This chain was Mommy's. I think she would have wanted Hannah to wear it. Isabella held the jewelry carefully, as if it were the most precious object in the world. Mommy would love for Hannah to wear this. Do you want to help me give it to her? Can I be your wedding assistant? Ryan laughed, hugging his daughter. You can be my official wedding assistant. When Hannah arrived that morning, she found father and daughter in the living room, both with mysterious expressions. Did something happen? She asked. We have a surprise for you, Isabella said, barely able to contain her excitement. What kind of surprise? Ryan approached, holding Isabella's hand. Hannah, over the past few months, you have transformed our lives in a way I never imagined possible. You brought light into our darkness, hope into our despair, love into our emptiness. Hannah began to understand what was happening, and her breath quickened. Will you marry me? Ryan asked, kneeling before her. Isabella ran to Hannah's side, holding out the gold chain. And will you be my mom in my heart? Hannah looked at the father and daughter kneeling before her, offering not just love, but a complete family, a life she had never dreamed of for herself. Tears rolled down her face, but they were tears of pure happiness. Yes, she whispered, and then louder. Yes, I want to marry you, Ryan, and I want to be your mom in my heart forever, Isabella. The hug that followed was long and full of promise. Isabella in the middle, Ryan and Hannah enveloping her, creating a perfect circle of love and protection. "Are we a real family now?" Isabella asked. "We always were," Hannah replied, kissing the top of the girl's head. "It just took me a little while to realize it." That night, after Isabella fell asleep, Ryan and Hannah stayed on the balcony planning the future. They decided it would be a simple wedding, at home, with only the most important people. Isabella would be the maid of honor, of course, and Mrs. Davison would help with all the preparations. "Are you sure?" Hannah asked. "Sure that this is what you want?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," Ryan replied. "And you?" Hannah looked at the apartment behind them, which had truly become a home, thought of the girl sleeping in. The next room, who had learned to love her as a daughter, thought of the man beside her who had opened his heart to a love she never imagined possible. "I'm absolutely sure," she said. "This is the life I always wanted, but never knew I could have." And that night, under the Los Angeles stars, a family that had been born from pain was completely healed by love, ready to write a new chapter of happiness that would forever honor Chloe's memory and celebrate the transformative power of true love. 6 months later, on a November morning when the Southern California autumn painted the sky a crystalline blue, the Santa Monica apartment awoke with a special energy. It was Ryan and Hannah's wedding day, and Isabella had woken up before sunrise, too excited to stay asleep. "Daddy! Hannah! Today's the big day!" she shouted, running through the hallways with her pink bathrobe fluttering behind her. Ryan appeared from the kitchen, already dressed in a navy blue dress shirt, smiling with a happiness that completely transformed his expression. The past few months had erased the lines of sadness from his face, replacing them with smile lines around his eyes. "Good morning, my maid of honor," he said, picking Isabella up. "Ready for the most important day of our lives?" "More than ready. Where's Hannah?" "Still getting ready. You know how it is. Brides need extra time to look beautiful." "But she's already the most beautiful in the world," Isabella declared, with the sincerity only children possess. Hannah appeared on the stairs, descending slowly. She wore a simple champagne-colored dress that enhanced her natural beauty without ostentation. Her hair was in a low bun, adorned with small white flowers, and Chloe's gold chain shone discreetly at her neck. "Wow," Ryan whispered. "So you're radiant." Isabella jumped from her father's arms and ran towards Hannah. "You look just like a real princess." "And you look like a princess too," Hannah replied, adjusting Isabella's white dress, which had been chosen especially for the occasion. Mrs. Davison appeared from the kitchen with teary eyes. Over the past few months, she had witnessed the complete transformation of this family, and seeing the happiness on everyone's faces was like watching a miracle unfold before her eyes. "Mrs. Davison, are you crying?" Isabella asked, concerned. "They're tears of joy, my girl. It's been so long since I've seen this house so full of happiness." The ceremony was to be held in the apartment's living room, with only a few close guests. Patricia, Ryan's sister, who had come from Chicago especially for the occasion, a few colleagues from work, Hannah's grandma Rose, who had made the trip from Ohio and was too emotional to speak, and a few neighbors who had become family friends. The judge, a kind middle-aged man who had been touched by the couple's story, arrived promptly at 10. Ryan had told him about how Hannah had saved Isabella, and consequently the entire family, and the magistrate was visibly moved by the opportunity to officiate a union born from such special circumstances. "Before we begin the ceremony," Isabella said, positioning herself next to the judge with the seriousness of an adult, "I would like to say something." All the guests turned to the girl, curious. "I want to thank my mommy in heaven for sending Hannah to take care of me and Daddy when we needed it most, and I want to promise that I will take care of both of them forever, like a real family." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Patricia pressed her hands to her chest, Grandma Rose sighed deeply, and even the judge had to discreetly wipe his glasses. "Isabella," said the judge, "would you like to present the rings to the bride and groom?" Isabella nodded solemnly and approached Ryan and Hannah with a small cushion where 2 simple gold rings rested. "This one is for you, Daddy," she said, handing him one of the rings, And this is for you, my mum in my heart." The word mum had naturally established itself between Isabella and Hannah in recent weeks, without force or artificiality. It was simply what she felt and expressed with the pure honesty of childhood. Ryan took Hannah's ring and looked into her eyes. "Hannah, you came into our lives when all seemed lost. You brought light where there was only darkness, hope where there was only despair. I promise to love you every day of my life, to be your partner in all joys and sorrows, and to build with you a family based on true love." Hannah held Ryan's ring with slightly trembling hands. "Ryan, you and Isabella gave me something I never thought I could have. A family. You taught me that love has no limits, that it's possible to love deeply without trying to replace who came before. I promise to take care of you both, to honor Chloe's memory, and to be the best wife and mother I can be." As they exchanged rings, Isabella held both of their hands, symbolically uniting the family that had formed through pain and been consolidated through love. "You may now kiss," Isabella announced, before the judge even finished speaking, causing laughter throughout the room. The kiss was soft, respectful, but filled with promises of happiness. Applause echoed through the room, and Isabella threw herself into their arms, creating a family hug that definitively sealed their union. "Now we're an official family," Isabella declared, radiant. The celebration continued in the living room and on the balcony, with a lunch prepared by Mrs. Davison that included all of Isabella's favorite dishes. The girl circulated among the guests like a little hostess, telling everyone she met about how Hannah had saved her and her father. "You know," she said to Grandma Rose, "Hannah also lost her mom when she was little, just like me. That's why she understood my sadness." Grandma Rose, in her 80s, and with the wisdom of a long life, held Isabella's small hands. "Sometimes, child, the right people come into our lives exactly when we need them most. Your Hannah is an angel." "I know. And now she's my mum forever." At the end of the afternoon, after all the guests had left, the new family gathered on the balcony to watch the sunset. Isabella was sitting on Hannah's lap, distractedly playing with the gold chain that now adorned her new mother's neck. "Hannah," Isabella said thoughtfully, "do you think my mummy in heaven and your mummy in heaven are friends?" "Now? I'm sure they're the best of friends," Hannah replied, stroking the girl's hair. "So they're not alone, right?" "No, little butterfly. No one is alone." Ryan watched the scene with a heart overflowing with gratitude. A year ago, his life had completely fallen apart. He had lost his wife, almost lost his daughter, and completely lost himself as a man and a father. Now, looking at Hannah and Isabella talking about angels and heavenly mothers, he understood that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters. "What are you thinking about?" Hannah asked, noticing her husband's distant gaze. "I'm thinking about how surprising life is. A year ago I was convinced our story was over. And now we're starting a completely new story," Hannah completed. "Not new," Isabella corrected, ever wise. "The same story, just with a happy ending now." That night, after Isabella fell asleep in her bed with a satisfied smile on her face, Ryan and Hannah stayed in the living room organizing wedding gifts and talking about the perfect day they had shared. "Do you regret anything?" Ryan asked. "Only not coming into your lives sooner," Hannah replied, snuggling beside him, on the sofa. "You arrived at the right time. Chloe always said that everything happens at the right time. Do you feel like she approves?" Ryan smiled, looking towards the piano where a photo of Chloe held a place of honor, no longer as an altar of pain, but as a celebration of eternal love. "I'm absolutely certain. Today, during the ceremony, when Isabella held our hands, I felt as if Chloe was there with us, blessing our union." 3 years passed since the wedding. Isabella, now 9, had become a confident, cheerful girl full of dreams and plans for the future. She studied piano, on the same instrument her biological mother used to play, and dreamed of becoming a teacher when she grew up, inspired by the way Hannah had cared for her. The Santa Monica apartment had transformed completely. The walls that once echoed silence now reverberated with laughter, lively conversations about Isabella's day at school, discussions about work, and plans for the future. What was once a mausoleum of painful memories had become a vibrant home full of life. Ryan had changed his work routine to spend more time at home. He discovered that professional success only had meaning when shared with those he loved. Hannah had returned to school studying education at night, determined to work professionally with children who had experienced traumas similar to what Isabella had lived through. One Sunday afternoon, while preparing their traditional grilled cheese, a ritual that had remained sacred over the years, Isabella asked a question that took her parents by surprise. "Hannah, are you and Daddy going to have a baby?" Hannah almost dropped the pan. "Why are you asking that, sweetie?" "Because Julia from school said that when parents get married, they have babies, and I wanted to have a little brother. Or sister." Ryan and Hannah looked at each other. It was a conversation they had had a few times but always postponed, worried if Isabella would be comfortable with the idea. "You'd like to have a little brother?" Ryan asked. "A lot. Then I could teach him everything Hannah taught me. And I could tell him about my mommy in heaven too. And what if it was a little sister? Even better. I would take care of her like Hannah takes care of me." Hannah knelt down to Isabella's level. "Sweetie, if we had a baby, you understand that you wouldn't change the love we feel for you, right? You would always be our first daughter, our little butterfly. I know. Love grows when it's shared, remember? My mommy in heaven taught me that." 6 months later, Hannah discovered she was pregnant. The news was met with an explosion of joy from Isabella, who immediately proclaimed herself official big sister and began planning what life would be like with the new family member. "What are we going to name him?" she asked every day. "First, we need to know if it's a boy or a girl," Ryan explained patiently. "Doesn't matter. If it's a boy, we can call him Gabriel. If it's a girl, we can call her Hope." "Why those names?" Hannah asked. "Gabriel because it's an angel's name, like my mommy in heaven. And Hope because that's what you brought to our family." On the day Hannah reached 5 months of pregnancy, during a routine ultrasound, they discovered it would be a girl. Isabella was in the exam room, holding Hannah's hand and looking fascinated at the screen where the baby could be seen. "She's moving," Isabella exclaimed. "Look, she's waving at me. It seems she already knows." "Her big sister's voice," the doctor said, smiling. "Hope," Isabella whispered, gently touching Hannah's belly. "Welcome to our family." One afternoon in December, 3 days before Christmas, as Isabella was helping Hannah decorate the Christmas tree, the girl suddenly stopped what she was doing. "Hannah, can I tell you something?" "Of course, sweetie. You can tell me anything." "Sometimes I dream about my mommy in heaven, and she talks to me about hope." "What does she say?" "She says that Hope is going to be special, that she'll bring even more love to our family, and that I'm going to be the best big sister in the world." Hannah felt her eyes fill with tears. "And what do you say back to her?" "I tell her that I'll take very good care of Hope, and that I'll tell her about all the mothers she has, me as a sister, you as a mommy, and her as a grandma in heaven. Isabella, you've grown so much, you've become such a wise little girl. It's because you taught me that pain can turn into love. And Daddy taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about choosing to stay together." That night, after Isabella went to sleep, Ryan found Hannah on the balcony contemplating the city lights that spread to the horizon. "Is everything okay?" he asked, hugging her from behind. "More than okay. I was just thinking about how we got here." "And what's the conclusion?" "That sometimes the most beautiful endings are born from the most difficult beginnings. That it's possible to rebuild a life on the ruins of another and make something even stronger." Isabella would say it's because love grows when it's shared. She's always right. Hope was born on a March morning under the golden sun that streamed through the maternity ward window. Isabella was too anxious to stay home, so Ryan brought her to meet her sister as soon as the delivery was over. "She's so tiny," Isabella whispered, looking fascinated at the baby sleeping in Hannah's arms. "Can I touch her?" "Of course. She's your sister." Isabella extended a small finger and gently touched the baby's hand. Hope opened her dark eyes, just like Isabella's and Ryan's, and seemed to focus her gaze on her older sister. "Hi, Hope. I'm Isabella, your sister. I promise I'll take care of you forever, that I'll teach you everything. I know, and that our family will be the happiest in the world." Ryan and Hannah looked at each other, moved. Isabella's promise echoed other promises made years before, when a young caregiver had promised to stay with a little girl who had forgotten how to live. "Welcome to the family, little Hope," Hannah whispered, kissing the baby's forehead. 2 years later, on a Sunday afternoon, when the whole family was gathered in the living room, Ryan reading the newspaper, Hannah organizing photos in an album, Isabella drawing at the coffee table and little Hope playing on the rug with her colorful blocks, Isabella looked up from her drawing and made an observation that revealed all the wisdom accumulated in her 11 years. "Daddy, do you remember when you said our story was over?" Ryan lowered his newspaper, intrigued. "I remember. Why?" "Well, I was thinking, our story never ended. It just changed chapters." "What do you mean, sweetie?" "The first chapter was when I had my mommy in heaven. The second chapter was when she went away and we were very sad. The third chapter was when Hannah came and taught us how to be happy again. The fourth chapter was when you got married. And now we're in the fifth chapter with Hope." Hannah stopped organizing the photos and looked at Isabella. "And what do you think the next chapter will be like?" "I don't know. But I know it will be good. Because we learned that even when bad things happen, we can still choose to be happy." Hope, who had just learned to walk, toddled over to Isabella and leaned on her older sister's leg. "Bella!" she babbled, using the only word she could say clearly. "Hi, little one," Isabella said, picking Hope up. "Bella's here." Ryan and Hannah watched the scene, their hearts overflowing with gratitude. Here was a family that had been born from the deepest pain and transformed into the purest joy. A family that had learned that true love does not replace, but multiplies. That the memory of those who have passed can coexist harmoniously with the happiness of those who have arrived. "You know," Hannah said, turning back to Ryan, "sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't taken that job." "It wouldn't have happened," Isabella answered before Ryan could even speak. "You were destined to meet my mommy in heaven. Told me so in a dream." "And what else did she tell you?" Ryan asked, always curious about Isabella's dreams. "That she's very proud of our family. That the love you feel for each other and for us is the greatest gift she could have left." That night, after the girls went to sleep, Ryan and Hannah stood on the balcony looking at the stars in the Los Angeles sky. "Can you believe it's been 5 years since we met?" Ryan asked. "It feels like a lifetime and like it was yesterday all at once. Do you regret anything?" "The same thing as always, not arriving sooner. You arrived at the exact right time. If you had come any earlier, maybe we wouldn't have been the right people for each other." "That's true. I needed to go through my own pain to be able to understand Isabella's. And I needed to hit rock bottom to be able to appreciate what really matters." They were silent for a few moments, enjoying the peace of that perfect moment. "Ryan," Hannah said finally. "Thank you." "For what?" "For letting me be a part of this family. For teaching me that it's possible to love deeply without erasing who came before. For giving me 2 wonderful daughters and a life I never imagined could exist." "I should be the one thanking you. You saved our lives, Hannah. In the most literal sense of the word. We saved each other. And now we have a whole life ahead of us to be happy." And that night, while the world slept around them, a family that had been born from the meeting of 3 wounded souls silently celebrated the miracle of healing through love. A healing that had begun with a simple piece of bread and butter and had blossomed into a lifetime of shared happiness. Little Isabella, who had once forgotten how to live, now slept peacefully, knowing she was surrounded by all the love in the world. Young Hannah, who had lost her mother too soon, was now the mother of 2 girls who adored her. And Ryan, who had lost all hope of being happy again, discovered that the human heart has an infinite capacity to love, to heal, to begin again. And so, in a Santa Monica apartment where the silence of pain once reigned, now echoed the voices of a family that had learned to turn tears into smiles, longing into gratitude, and endings into new beginnings. Dear listeners, we hope that the journey of Ryan, Hannah, and Isabella has touched your hearts as deeply as it touched ours in telling it. This story reminds us that even in the darkest moments of our lives, when it seems that all is lost, there is always a possibility for a new beginning, for healing, for love. If this narrative stirred emotions in you, if you identified with the pain or the hope of our characters, please leave a like so we know we've reached your hearts. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the stories we prepare with so much care, and tell us in the comments which moment moved you the most, which character touched you the most. Every day, we bring you stories that celebrate the strength of the human spirit, the capacity for overcoming adversity, and above all, the transformative power of true love. Until our next meeting, carry with you the certainty that there is always hope, there is always love, there is always the possibility of a new beginning.